it's a pleasure to be here, and I think Jami and I were just sort of whispering about how thrilled we are, how many people were willing to brave this fierce storm to be here in this church with us this morning. So thank you all. Jami.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi. How you doing?
Good. We've known each other so long, so it's just really nice.
This is really nice, especially we met when we were both living in Brooklyn, and Jami now lives in New Orleans, and now I live in the Glens of Antrim, so we don't get to hang quite as much as we used to.
Yes, so this festival is responsible for bringing us together, which is
so
really nice.
It's a treat in every way, but you know, it's an incredible and rare pleasure when you get to interview one of your dearest friends in the world, but you're also sort of tempted to just fall back into default mode and gossip. And the usual, you know, Rosie, what did you cook last night? Jami, how's your dog? But we'll try to avoid that kind of chit chat, and really focus on the books. When Jami and I met in 2007 at a mutual friend's book launch in New York, am I right, Jami, that was right around the time the Catman?
My third was about to come out, yes.
Right, that's when we got to know one another. And now, as you know, you can say a big round
10th book.
Books. How does that feel?
Well, on the one hand, it's nice to be able to have a body of work that you can look back at and see how you've grown and changed. And really, I was saying in the car over here that the milestones or the way I break down my life is through my books. Like if someone says, where were you at this year? I'm like, okay, what book came out that year? And what was I doing? And because it really, when you put out a book, it's like so much goes into it, but then also you get to travel and meet people and you get reviewed, and it's a new way of engaging with the world. So, you know, to look back on all that it feels really special to me, but also I know at the same time that every time I start writing a new book, it's as if I don't know anything and I have to figure it out all over again. So it means something, but also then we get back to the work.
Right. Well, you know, when I think of you, I think of a lot of things. Obviously, your talent, but your work ethic is pretty extraordinary.
I mean, it's how I pay my bills. So if you want writing to be your job, then you have to treat it like it's your job.
I guess I should worry about my bills more. Right. But we'll talk about that. But I've often joked with Jami over the years that I think of her as the James Brown of fiction. You know how he was known as the hardest working man in rock and roll. I think of Jami as the hardest working woman.
That's nice of you to say.
In fiction.
Yeah.
But more famously, I'm sure some of you know, Jami has been called the poet laureate of dysfunctional families.
It's true.
And you know, when I think of your earlier work, I think of sort of younger protagonists, sort of women on their own, navigating the world. And is it right that the Middlesteins, which was a great big bestseller breakthrough book, and it's very funny and it's very poignant, and if you haven't read it yet, I really think you should. Do you feel that was sort of your shift into really exploring family dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't, every character has a family, whether they're seen or not seen, or sometimes it's just a family of friends, but there's always a family dynamic in my work, but that was the first time that I really started to contemplate the idea of family. And I've had a couple of books since then that do that, but not all of them.
Right.
But that one, and then All This Could Be Yours, and now this one, and they sort of feel like a trilogy of a kind to me.
I can see that.
And I sort of am like, this feels very done. Like I don't think I'll be writing about family again for a while. It sort of said everything left there was for me to say in this book.
I think you've earned a breather.
Yeah.
You know, families, as your work often shows, are incredibly intense. You know, but each novel, even though I hadn't thought of them as a kind of trilogy, but I can see that, they are very different families.
Yes.
And very different dynamics. And, you know, one of the many things I really enjoyed about the latest, A Reason to See You Again, is this sister and sister dynamic. You know, there have been brother-sister dynamics, certainly in Middlesteins, A Reason, All This Could Be Yours. each time you write about a complicated family, I mean, I feel funny calling any of them dysfunctional because, like, look at my own.
Right. No, I think every family is.
Absolutely.
I don't know anyone who has a perfectly functional family, and if they say they do, they're lying to themselves and
Right.
you, so.
Right. All dysfunctional families are dysfunctional in their own way.
Yes, exactly.
I guess we can say. Well, I'm going to back up a little bit,
Okay.
and I'm going to ask you to correct me if this is a false memory. A memoirist should never talk about the possibility of false memory, but anyway. I feel like I've heard this from other fiction writer friends, and I feel like I heard a version of this from you years ago, where in a way a novel starts with sort of hearing the characters. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, so for me, so first I'll tell you a little bit about the book, about
Yes.
my new book, which is not quite available yet here, but I looked online today and it'll come out in late October. You'll be able to get it then. This family narrative is different because I wanted to write a book where the family is almost never in the same room with each other. They're sort of, they're not able to be, sometimes they're not physically able to be together, and then sometimes emotionally they just don't want to be near each other. And yet somehow they keep finding their way back to each other. You could have a family member that moves far away, but somehow they're the person you want to call when something urgent happens in your life. So there's a lot of this moving in and out of each other's lives throughout the book, and that felt different and new to me. But still, they still know exactly how to support each other, but also just tick each other off just a little bit too. So, and one of the backdrops of the book, because it starts in 1971 and it goes all the way to 2007, and I chose 2007 because that's the year the iPhone came out, which I think really changed a lot of things. And then the backdrop of the book is that because it's so much about how we talk or don't talk to each other, I have one of the characters working on the evolution of the cell phone. That's her job over several decades. So it's about our families, and it's about how we talk to each other or not talk to each other, and how the way we have to talk to each other has distinctly changed over the last 30 plus years.
Yeah, that comes through so beautifully. And it's interesting you bring up the technology part of this, because one of the two sisters, is it fair to say there's kind of this breakdown where Shelley's the brilliant one, mm-hmm. and her sister Nancy is the pretty one.
Right.
And, this feels like something imposed on them in a way by Frida, their mother.
Their mother, yeah.
But so Shelley, with her brilliance that's obvious from the first page of the novel.
The woman who's developing the cell phone, yes.
Right, she becomes this tech wizard, when the whole field is really just emerging. And it's, so interesting how it sort of, it basically spans my lifetime,
Same.
This book. And, thinking of how we grew up in a world before email.
Yes, if you can see the cover of the book at the very front is just as a phone, like an old-fashioned phone. And when the cover designer actually asked me, because it sprawls all of these decades, she asked me what decade I was thinking of the most, or what I felt was the strongest kind of moment in the book, and I said the 1980s. So now we have this great, she just immediately picked a phone from the 1980s that I remember getting one for my birthday and putting it in my room. I don't even think I had that many people to call, honestly, but but I remember the power of having that, that landline. It was so important. So, and so I'll add also, you asked me about how I find my way into the book, and so I'm a really character-driven writer. I mean, I believe in plot. It has a plot, but I'm most fascinated with the people. And the way that it started for me was that I was at home as we all were, during the pandemic, and I was spending a lot of time wistfully shopping online and looking through vintage clothes and things like that, and thinking, wouldn't it be nice if I could actually go somewhere and wear these things? And then I kept seeing these shirts that were sort of like these high-necked lace blouses with maybe big puffy sleeves, and I was thinking about Stevie Nicks, and I was just thinking about the 1980s and this kind of dreamy vibe, but also I was thinking, now who's wearing this shirt? Who's wearing those kind of big plasticky earrings? And I pictured this woman who was kind of the cool aunt, and I pictured her in the suburbs, and she was kind of the single working gal on the go, and she had this family, in the suburbs, her sister and her kind of nuclear family. and she's talking to them, and they're engaging, they're sort of, teasing each other a little bit. They're interested in each other. They're jealous of each other as sisters, or like friends who feel like sisters can be. And they're sort of, eyeing each other, what they're wearing, how they're, what's their hair like, how's their, outfit change, things like that. And I was really interested in like how all of these characters dress. So there's a lot of clothing in this book that I've never done that before. There's even sort of like the way that they smell is really specific. Like you can actually go online and order perfumes from the 1980s and colognes from the 1980s, and they just sort of give you a little grab bag of tiny little.
Did you do that?
So I did that, yeah.
Wow.
I was like, I need to know what they smell like right now in 1986. So I ordered like these scents, and I wanted to know what men were wearing in the 1980s, that kind of thing. So that was really my starting point, is this character, and how she looked, how she had changed her look, maybe because she was somebody who was a little less concerned with her appearance because she's kind of this mathy, brainy woman.
Right.
And then when she goes into corporate America, there's a boss, a man who sort of says, if you want to get along with everyone, maybe dress up a little bit more.
Right.
So it kind of like triggers this moment where she becomes really interested in fact. She doesn't half-ass anything, right? She's just like, all right, I'm all in, I'm going to figure out how to dress. So that was my starting point, and then I thought, okay, this is where the book begins. But what I have found is, whenever I think the book has just begun, it's actually halfway through the book. And then I have to go back in time. So I usually write, and I'll get about 2/3 of the way through, and then I'll say, oh, I need to go back and see who they were before that moment. But however you get in the book is great. Whatever leads you down that path is great. But there's always, for me, this character that shows me everyone. Once I sort of understand who they are, what their gaze is, they show me their mother, their sister, their lovers, their husbands, all those kinds of things. And so for me, it was this woman in this puffy shirt.
I love that sequence. At the time, this character, Shelley, is told by this man she has to sort of soften her look. She's still the only woman at the company. Is that right?
That's right.
And there is this wonderful sequence where she's like, yeah, Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
I could do a little Stevie Nicks.
Yes.
Jamie, do you know that when I entered college, I probably told you this story, but I went to like a very small art school, and all of the very catty upper-class men and women had nicknames for the incoming students. And I thought I had toned down my hippie, flowy look a lot, but all the older drama majors referred to me as Stevie Jr.
Oh, that's cute.
I mean, not so bad, but they didn't mean it in a nice way.
I've seen pictures of you from your college
You
years,
have?
and that tracks. That sounds right. That sounds right,
That
yeah.
tracks. So Shelley's was the first voice you really heard.
Yes.
But as you said, even though this is what got you into the book, it isn't the beginning. Would you read from the beginning of this novel?
I'll read a little bit.
Thank you.
So it starts, and I'll tell you that the structure of the novel, honestly, is it starts in 1971, and then every chapter will just sort of flashes forward a couple of years. And then it kind of catches you up where everyone's been in the middle, and then it just keeps going. But that's kind of one of the tricks of the book, is this sort of forward motion and flash forward motion of it. And I really like playing with time. Time is very special to me, because I sort of feel like we're all kind of living, our past and our present and our future all at the same time. So I'll just start with chapter 1, 1971. Oh, the games families play with each other. In the Cohen household, it was Scrabble, and they played it every Saturday night. This was one of Frida's rules: telephone unplugged, the whole family together. The girls were still young enough that they had nowhere urgent to be but right there. Nancy, 16, Shelley, 12, idling in the living room with her father, Rudy, while Frida made popcorn in the kitchen. Tonight, Lawrence Welk led some orchestral tribute to America on the television set, Rudy nodding his head along to the music. Rudy, frail, angular, fading, but loving and present, a real bon vivant when he had the energy. I want him alive, thought Frida. I must feed him. A frantic feeling, him, she must take care of him. She salted and buttered the popcorn in good, thick, fatty layers, humming as she delivered it in a Tupperware bowl to the family who sat, sunken in a green velvet conversation pit, a lucite table at the center, set up with a game board, a family waiting, press play. Shelley clapped for the popcorn. It smells divine, she said. What a delicious and satisfying treat. Shelley, always trying on words for size. She popped one piece after another into her mouth. She liked to have something to do with her hands, a place to direct her nervous energy, thought Frida. This whole family was nervous. Everyone was worried about Rudy, who'd been sick and then not sick and then, and then sick again. It had been this way for years. Malnutrition in his youth, in the camps, and all the stress, and then and always. Now he had a bad heart. He was 41 and looked 60, a little worse this year, but then again, what did worse mean when things had been bad for so long? So it was good for them all to be together, thought Frida, every Saturday, a regular moment for the family, private after the crowds at Shoal the night before. But also, she wanted to win at Scrabble. The girls were good at the game, competitive enough to keep things interesting. Frida had taught them some tricks, all the two-letter words, the most potent available ways to use Q and X, their little sponge minds preparing for their next moves. There was Nancy organizing her tiles to be just so. She liked it when ideas clicked together easily and was sharp enough to find a few 5- or 6-letter words here and there. A tidy girl, demure, pretty, mildly interested in lots of things, but not one thing especially. She'd do all right, thought Frida, at this game in life. Shelley was the real challenger in the family, strategic, focused, unflappable, dark-haired, dark-eyed, healthy peach-toned skin, a generally intense presence, even for a child. She left no loose ends behind, blocked every exit and entry point if she could help it. Our little winner, thought Frida, smarter than everyone in the room, perhaps, but she better not beat me, thought Frida. Not yet. Rudy was a useless competitor, just there to have fun with his family. English was his second language, and though he spoke it well, he didn't have the same competitive spirit attached to the game. Now, if this were in German, I would defeat you all, he said. He was daydreamy and faint and beautiful, their thin, pale papa, who had been released from the camps, barely a teenager, starving, and made his way to America to exist as a hero in their eyes. The girls could not ever imagine being as hungry as he had been. All of them wondered, marveled at his presence. He knew how to hold a room, even if it was simply by being alive. For a while, when he was younger, he'd given speeches to temples across America about his journey. What was it like in the camps? The American Jews really wanted to know. Most survivors didn't want to talk about it, but Rudy thought it was important that they hear the truth. When Frida had met him, he had seemed so important and sophisticated, even in his frailty. An elegant speaker and funny, too. That silk scarf he had tied around his neck. What a story. He told it well. People warmed to him quickly. He had needed a secretary, he said, and she traveled with him until it was just easier to be married. Frida was only 19, attached already to a man. She thought he'd be the breadwinner forever. He should be paid for what he went through. She firmly believed that. Once Hollywood had even been interested in what had happened to him. Rudy and Frida as newlyweds, poolside, sunburned, giddy, a cabana boy dipping to serve them, a producer who had rushed in, ordering a drink from no one in particular as he moved along the patio, then shaking Frida's hand and holding it for a moment with both of his. And then nothing happened. Letters still arrived on occasion, typed, formal, offering a travel stipend and maybe a small speaker's fee. They saved them up and placed a down payment on this house that Rudy, with all his stylish desires, had wanted. This modern home. But then there'd been new wars, and then fewer speeches to give, and after a while, less of everything in their lives. Bookkeeping work for him, shifts in a nursing home for her, popcorn at home cost less than popcorn in the movie theater. No one knew how to budget quite like Frida. Scrabble, Frida's favorite, was entirely free, of course. And tonight, Shelley was winning by a lot. I'll stop there.
I love that opening.
Who do you think is going to win?
Well, Jami, do you remember back in the day when we were just becoming friends, what really kind of made it happen?
Yes, we played online Scrabble.
Constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hours and hours and chatted.
Yeah, and I don't know, did you have Scrabble in your family when you were growing up?
Scrabble was not allowed because and this is one of the many things that delighted me when I started reading A Reason to See You Again. Like Frida, my father was insanely competitive.
Yes.
And my mother had witnessed him and his brother, my Uncle Bill, have a screaming match over Scrabble before my brother and I were born, and she wouldn't see it.
Wow.
So I didn't do it till college.
The great Scrabble ban of the Schaap household.
Yeah, and then it was in college I really came to love the game.
Wait, can I say one more thing about Scrabble?
You can say anything about Scrabble.
This is not my family. And I've written all these books about like these dysfunctional families, and then everyone meets my parents and they're like checking them out. Are you okay? Are you nice? And it's not my family. But I did grow up in a Scrabble household.
I could see that.
And the dynamic of it was always really interesting to me because everyone wanted to sit after my mother. because my mother wanted us to succeed. We were her children, right? So she would sort of, not cheat, but she'd leave us openings, right? And no one wanted to sit after my father because he played to win. And that maybe is the slightest dynamic, even though my mother, let us win or whatever, or taught us how to win, that I should say, that was not her. But as time has gone on, and now we are grown-ups, my mother has become the fiercest competitor you will ever know. And we realized she was faking, we didn't know she wasn't any good. She was good. She just let us, and now she does really want to win, so.
What I found is technology has made me really impatient with humans.
Yes.
You can play a machine in 30 seconds, and then you have to sit there and wait for your friend to, figure out a word.
Yeah.
It's kind of made me impatient.
Yeah, maybe it's not for you. That's for you.
Yeah, I'm going to try to play in person more. I know we're going to talk a little bit about craft, but, to stick with the opening of this novel, I think we'll all agree openings are really important. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I think is so great about the first few pages, you compress so much crucial information in the first 2 pages. We learn really important things about the differences between the girls, about Frida, then kind of a bomb drops about Rudy. Mm-hmm. Are you aware of sort of packing so much important info in when you're doing it?
It's true, yes. This is kind of a short book, right? It's 222 pages, it's about 70,000 words, which I don't think it was short, but some people have said, oh, you can just zip right through this thing. All details are important to me, but not all details deserve a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And so I have an understanding I feel like I tell the entire story in this book. I just did an interview with someone who said, I feel like this book could have been 800 pages. You could have kept expanding all these things. And I was like, all the 800-page information is in there, but it's just how my gaze goes and what I want you to see and what I want you to know when I want you to know it. But for me, my focus is really these, I'm much more interested in how the Scrabble game is being played. Mm-hmm. And then we're sort of revealing these little facts. But yeah, I'm interested in those deep emotional moments, and then the surrounding information is important, but it's just not worth my attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I found it really striking how you learned so much that you need to know so quickly.
I will give you everything you need to know, I swear.
Yeah, no, you really
in these
do.
books, yeah, but it's
Which
just
is
pacing,
good.
right? I think pacing is very interesting.
I do too, and I find it really tricky.
Pacing?
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know. It's now after 10 books, I'm I know how I want things to move. I know what I want the tone of it to be. I know what I want the vibe of it to be. Once I choose it, then I'm off, and then I keep going. And so I just want to make sure that all the questions are answered, though.
Right. Well, I think that's a good thing to do for a reader, for sure. This idea of game playing, this is sort of what sets us up. And in a way, to me, the book, among other things, is sort of striving to answer this question, why are families like this? What makes each member of a family who they are, what they are? Why is it so often the case that we who are related to one another closely, intimately, seem unable to resist playing games?
I think there's something about rivalry. I think there's something about sometimes you can't really hide from your family, and you can't really, they see you and they know your past in a specific kind of way. And so sometimes it's just harder to talk to them or tell them things because they're, in an ideal world, you have a wonderful support network of your family.
Right.
But life happens.
Absolutely.
And also we exist outside of our family. Right? And there's things that happen to us outside of our family that we bring to the table that the family may not necessarily know about. This isn't quite related, but I was in Boston recently, just 5 days ago, and I was talking with a friend there who said that she has a family group chat of 20 people. And they're Boston Irish. Oh, no. And she said that every 5 days somebody leaves the group chat because they get mad And then she sees when they come back, of course, too. But and it's usually it's the men in the family, the brother, there's older brothers, and they all keep getting mad.
drop out.
And they drop out.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
see them
yeah.
leaving, and
Yeah.
then they come back.
I wonder if there's a study of like family chat attrition.
Yes, right.
And the men always seem to lead. My husband, as Jamie knows, is Armagh Irish, not Boston Irish, and his family has one of these epic 25 people
Group
WhatsApp
chat,
groups. Yeah. I just silence it most of the time. And then I feel bad if I miss a birthday.
Right.
Oh. So, I know. That's the hazard of silence. I feel like dropping out would seem like a real
You
aggression.
can't do it. It's an aggression to drop out of the group chat, yes.
Yeah.
So, so this book is like, there's no group chat in this book.
No.
Like the through line is like their group chat with each other is just picking up the phone and calling them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a different time. I mean, among other things the book explores is how differently we communicate.
It's wild to me that this started, I was born in 1971, this book begins in 1971, and it's filed under historical fiction in so many places.
Whoa. Are you serious?
I mean, I'm historical fiction, you guys. That's it.
Wow.
My life. And probably a lot of people in this room, it's historical fiction, too.
I feel like we could spontaneously turn into stone monuments right now on stage. No, that is wild. That really puts things in a perspective I might not have been quite ready for, Jamie.
Right.
Wow, I would have just looked for it under fiction.
Right.
I thought I would just interject for a moment and say, Jamie, I've never met your dad in all these years, but her mom is super. So when Jamie says this isn't her family,
Yes.
I know that she speaks the truth.
Right. But I always think they're sort of 3 cousins away, the people that I write about.
Sure.
They're sort of in a similar universe, and yeah.
Right. They're people you know.
Right.
In some way.
Yes.
But not the people immediately in your family unit.
Correct.
They're familiar people. I mean, I remember with All This Could Be Yours, it felt like, even though it moves around a bit, it's mostly in New Orleans, but it's such a sort of kaleidoscope of so many people in that city.
Yes.
And there's quite a few characters happening in this book, too. And it moves around. We get a lot of Chicago, California, Florida. Chicago's home for you.
Yes.
I mean, New Orleans is home now.
Yes.
What brings you back to Chicago in your fiction?
I mean, it's where I was born and raised, outside of Chicago, in a small town that had cornfield. I had cornfields in my backyard, so it was really quite just on the cusp of starting to develop. And even though I have traveled all over and lived all over, I still feel like that's where I'm from. That's like I'm of that community, and it is a community that was like an emerging Jewish community also. So I'm Jewish, but I don't practice. I consider myself culturally Jewish. But at the same time, like I grew up in this particular milieu, and so it was. I hadn't felt like I was done yet.
Yeah.
Writing about these people that were from there, of there, and it just showed up quite naturally to me. Like, we're still here. I mean, I would love to be that person who has complete control over what their areas of interest are, but it's really, so much of it is like my insides just telling me this is actually what you need to do right now. I mean, you write what you can write. You write the book that's right in front of you. Again, I wish that I could write this, be a little bit more strategic about it, but the subject matter finds you more than you find the subject matter. Right,
and do you find it harder or easier or neither to write about your hometown now that you've lived away from it for so long?
I think the further you get away from it, the easier it gets to write about it.
That's my hunch too.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you're right in the middle of it, or even when I was in university and I was just a few years away from it, I couldn't process it at all. And then the first time I ever wrote about it was with the Middlesteins, which was my 4th book. And I had read Olive Kitteridge. Have you all read Olive Kitteridge? It's a masterpiece, truly. And I read that, and I was like, oh, she's writing about this small town and where she's from, but she's she's connecting the dots, but yet everyone's sort of allowed to be their own person at the same time, which I find really rewarding as a reader.
Yeah, it's a great book.
And I read that and I thought, oh, I think I know how to write about this now. So then I'd probably been away from there like 20 years or something like that. So I think that there's a real value to writing about things in the moment. There's an immediacy to it, there's a passion to it, there's a fire to it, but also, looking in the rearview mirror, the retrospect is quite powerful, and all the wisdom that you've acquired along the way, so that you can view things a little bit more rationally and not personally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like with humanity, but not like hurt.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of perfect, perfectly in accord with what I'm thinking about now, which is, you got, if I may say, you got this fabulous New York Times book review, and you were an editor's pick last week in the Times. And I liked that review. I thought the reviewer had read it very sensitively and very intelligently, and she also had a sense of humor about things. She's like, this may be a miserable family, but one I would spend a lot more time with. But you mentioned humanity just now, and I feel like you are really humane to all of these complicated, occasionally miserable people, that they get their due as individuals, which I find in Elizabeth Strout too.
Right.
Someone might seem kind of awful when you first look at them. Like Frida, she comes on strong at the start. But I found myself softening a
Towards
lot
her,
when I learned her story.
I like Frida. I like Frida
a lot.
Yeah, I think that she had a lot of hardships in her life.
My goodness.
But then she comes around at the end, and you see the real her. My attitude or strategy towards all of my writing is that I start out with characters that I either really like and I really know, and then I sort of write my way to finding their flaws. Or I start out with characters where I just think these are sad people or unhappy people or mean, or that there's something like really, really flawed about them, and then I write my way into loving them. And that's like, I want to know all the good stuff, and I want to know all the flaws too. It's just that's the stew of humanity right there, right? Like, we have to accept all the things. And so I love all these characters.
Yeah.
And someone just read it recently and said, I know I'm not supposed to like Frida. And I said, no, you can like whoever you want to like. Whenever I have these complex characters, people will read them and say, they end up saying, I'm a Frida, or I'm a Shelley, or I'm a this, like that's my role in my family, or I do these kinds of things. And people identify for the strangest reasons. My last novel, All This Could Be Yours, there's a character in it who is a daughter-in-law, and there's this scene in it where, and she's got like a little family secret, this daughter-in-law, and she goes to a pharmacy, like a
CVS,
like a CVS. I don't know what a CVS is.
Like a Boots.
Yeah, she goes to a Boots, and she just is like kind of despondent and sad, and she just starts pulling out all the like face masks and like skincare products, and she just is like doesn't know what else to do, or like how to develop it, or how to deal with it, I should say. And she's just got a whole like grocery cart full of all this stuff to fix herself.
Right. To be clear, it's not COVID face masks. It's like face treatment.
Yes, face treatments. Yes, that kind of thing. And she's like just sort of wild and upset, and it's just this kind of dramatic scene, and then she realizes she doesn't want any of it, and she just leaves it at the counter. But I've had so many people say to me, I have done that. I have filled my cart with skincare products just to make myself feel better. And I also have done that too, although I'm not that character. And and then it's the thing that I wrote was the most intense and like messed up, neurotic moment. Yeah. And yet that's the thing that we can cling to. Those flawed moments are the things that we cling to in literature because we can see ourselves in it.
Yeah, I loved that character too, and that was a great. I've never done that.
Haven't?
No, I've never.
There's still time, Rosie. It feels great.
For me, it's sort of small housewares.
Oh yeah, you're a housewares person.
Like a bunch of napkin rings, egg cups, that kind of thing. But if you don't mind going back to Frida for a minute.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. The thing is, I find her. I was going to say indefensible as a mother.
She's not nice to her children.
She's not nice to her children, but I'm not going to say indefensible or defensible. It's neither of those things. But as a human, we get to understand her.
It's true.
We really, really do. And it really softened me and definitely made me feel close. She was one of the characters to whom I felt closest
That's
as
great
a reader.
To hear. Yeah.
Jami, I have a feeling that more than a few people in this crowd are familiar with 1,000 words. Some of them have probably spent time diligently writing their 1,000 words a day for a couple weeks every year, maybe more. That book didn't come out so long ago either.
Yeah, I could talk about that project. I'll just explain what it is, because I'm going to assume that plenty of people don't know what it is. I like that you assumed everyone knew, though. That's who you want.
I saw lots of smiles.
That's who you want interviewing you, right there. So 1,000 Words of Summer is this project that I started in 2018. And I didn't know I was starting a project, which is why I think it worked, because you sort of stumble into these ideas. It's not so different than writing a novel or anything creative. But a friend of mine, we wanted to get some momentum on our work. She's a teacher at the Arts High School. She was working on a book proposal. And so I was finishing a novel, and it was summertime, and that's when she had off to write because she was a teacher. And so we decided we were going to write 1,000 words a day for 2 weeks straight, and to sort of give us momentum, because that's a lot of words, 14,000 words. I don't know how many writers there are in the crowd, but trust me, it's a lot. It's a lot of words. Yeah. And so I tweeted about it because I'm an online person, and all these people, like maybe a couple hundred people online, said, yes, I also would like to write 1,000 words a day. I want to do it with you. And so I set up a little mailing list, and people signed up for it that year, and I would send out letters. And also I asked other writers to write letters, encouraging people and talking about creativity and productivity and how to stay focused and things like that. And those letters went out every day for 2 weeks. We all wrote 1,000 words together. And then by the end of it, there was 2,000 people who had signed up for it and that were doing it. And so the next year came around, and I said, well, I guess let's do it again. And so then it was 5,000 people and 10,000. So now we're close to almost 50,000 people. And we all write for 2 weeks a year in the summer together, and we talk online together, we support each other. People use a little hashtag 1,000 Words a Summer, and then you can scroll through social media and see how many words people wrote that day. And it's just become this really lovely, encouraging community of people. And I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I only knew that I loved it, right? And that I just wanted people to feel good about writing. And not even necessarily, oh, I'm writing a book, I'm writing a screenplay, or anything like that at all, but just to sit down and engage. And I know you feel better having written. We can get into that another, or we can get into that more. We can discuss. But I feel really good writing. I feel really good and happy in the moment when I'm writing.
Yes, you do.
And it takes me to a wonderful place, and I feel very calm, and I feel and also excited about what I'm talking about, and I love getting into the minds of characters, and I love the idea of communicating with the world through my work. Mm-hmm. And here I am, I'm sitting here with all of you because of things that I've written. That's an incredible experience and opportunity for me. So I wanted to encourage people to write, and so then this year, or actually 2 years ago, I was like, well, I have all these letters from all of these authors. I wonder if it should be a book. I wonder if we should collect it in some way. And so sorry if you were in the workshop yesterday, you already heard this, but what I did was I took all the letters that all these authors had ever written, and I put them into a document, and I read through all of them, and it supercharged me. It just made me want to write, and it made me think, if it makes me feel that way, and I'm the person who's supposed to be cheering everyone else on, then this probably would have a really positive impact on people. So that we put together a book, and it came out in January of this year, and it's been really wonderful, and I loved to tour around, and I've done all these wonderful workshops where we all just, we write together, we share our ideas. I did one here yesterday that was really lovely, and it's like this beautiful side project for me that's sort of become a little bit something more. And then the other side of it also is that it's a fundraiser, and so all the authors get to pick a charity, and then beyond that, I don't know, do they have like a Scholastic Book Fair or something like that here?
Not that I know of.
Oh, well, we have this thing called Scholastic Book Fair in the schools where kids can come and buy children's books. Yeah, you have something like that here? And so what I'm doing now, this is the second year in a row, is I'm actually just sponsoring an entire school.
That's great.
So that every kid can have a book in the school. And
That's really great.
There are plenty of places where kids can't have a book.
Right.
And that there's a sense of inequity
Yeah.
around reading. And the school librarian that I've worked with has said to me that it's, when we do this, when we sponsor the entire school, she said it's just the first year that we don't have tears,
Yeah.
because there's this wistfulness to it of wanting to have this book and not being able to. So it's like following like this like loving organic logic down the road, starting with let's all write together and ending up all the way down to let's make sure people can get to read books too, and feel equal.
Yeah.
So we're all equal in this process.
It's pretty amazing. And I know you've described it as one of your proudest achievements, even though, as you say, it didn't start off programmatically at all. You didn't really know where it was going at the beginning. You and the other writers who have contributed have raised so much funding for so many different charities. And also like spreading some joy.
Some joy, yeah.
Going back to this, I love writing, I love having written. I will say, and you are welcome to disagree, my fiction writing friends seem to have a better time on the whole than my nonfiction writing friends.
Wow.
And myself.
You think because we get to play a little bit more.
Play a little more.
We get to invent things a little bit more.
Yeah, and this whole experience of characters sort of coming to life in your mind.
Yes.
It really does sound like fun.
It's fun, you guys.
Yeah.
Try it if you haven't tried it yet.
And, I'll always insist that nonfiction, of course, is a creative act also, but a different kind. And of course, you've written a memoir yourself.
Maybe it's the subject matter also.
Yeah.
If I was writing something about things, nonfiction, where it was joyful, then maybe I would enjoy the nonfiction more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there does seem to be this particular quality of fun with fiction writing and of invention with fiction writing.
That's why I can't quit it.
You can't quit it.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, I'm going to say I know more fiction writers who love writing than I know nonfiction writers. But even among the many fiction writers I know who love writing, I don't know many who love it.
Quite
as
like
much
me.
as you do.
I do really love it. It's my happy place.
And I think that's one thing that 1,000 Words conveys, this sense of pleasure and love and in a weird way, a kind of safety.
Yeah, safety is important. I mean, the thing is that sometimes we're just going to have to write about sad stuff. And if we're processing traumatic moments in our life, or writing something that just makes you feel vulnerable or risky in any kind of way, that can be less pleasurable. My biggest writing advice is stay hydrated.
Oh, Jami.
Water. Thank you very much. Tend to yourself. Make sure you have all that you need.
Sorry.
Which isn't very much. As a writer, we don't really need very much. We just need a pen and paper or a laptop or iPad or whatever it is that you're writing on.
Yeah.
But it's still serious. You're sort of cracking, you're tapping into a vein or something like that, and letting it flow. So it's playful, but also you need to have the right approach to things. You have to, but also we're so lucky that we can write. We have
we sure are.
Freedom of speech and access to the tools that we need, and that we're actually free, out in the world and able to, I don't take any of it for granted.
I know you don't.
Yes.
That's always been clear to me. And the more books you write, that feeling doesn't diminish at all. You never do. And,
Thanks, Rosie.
No, you're welcome, Jami. No, it's wonderful. One thing I think is also great in what you give to your fellow writers and helping to sort of build community, there is this joy, there is this love, but, in your own way, you are a task mistress. So many writers will say, you got to write every day.
I say at least a few times a week.
Yeah.
If you have a full-time job,
Yeah.
you still can get in there a couple of times a week. I acknowledge that. And I think that things have softened over the years. So when I started this, and also the other thing about this project is I am actually really a cranky person. I'm
keeping my mouth shut on that one.
I'm secretly a cranky person, but about this one thing I can be the best version of myself. And so that's why I appreciate it. The opportunity to be a cheerleader when I was definitely not a cheerleader in high school. Do you know what I'm saying? I was definitely not that person, but I will cheerlead you all onto writing. So
I think a lot of us non-cheerleaders wind up as writers.
do you think? Yeah.
I think so. But you know, what you were saying about, kind of feeling lucky as a writer, what we need is something to write on and write with.
That's right.
I used to see this double bass player in my neighborhood in Brooklyn carrying his gigantic instrument up and down the subway stairs all the time, and I thought, I'm really glad I'm a writer and not a double bass player. Derek, I'm trusting you to keep it. Would this be about the time to open up for questions? Do we know what time?
It's 12:40.
It's 12:40, so pretty soon.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you.
I just want to take this moment and make Rosie talk about her book for just half a second.
That wasn't the arrangement. But thank you.
But Rosie, could you just tell us a little bit about your book?
I can tell you a little bit about my book. It's over there, right? It's that one.
Yeah.
As I said, it's called The Slow Road North, How I Found Peace in an Improbable Country. And, the quick version is, what did this lifelong New Yorker, what happened that led her to this teeny tiny village in the Glens of Antrim? And a few things led me there. But I found a home for my grief in this little village. And I learned a lot about my friends and neighbors and what they'd been through. And they very generously shared their stories with me. So the book isn't a straightforward memoir. I really didn't want this to be a me kind of thing. Because as a memoirist, I really tire of myself a lot.
It's true. It's good to write about other things.
It really is. And also a kind of cultural history of this village, which had once been a really thriving village. And in the last 60 years, it really went into a kind of decline. And there are many reasons why, and I'm sure many of you can guess some of those reasons. But paradoxically, I'm not the only one there. Among the old-timers and so-called blow-ins who find it to be a strangely healing place. So that's kind of what The Slow Road North is about.
And she has gotten really wonderful reviews.
Thank you.
And from your New York Times review.
Thank you.
So beautiful, and it's very poetic. She is a poet, and you will read some of the most beautiful sentences you've ever read in this book. That's my blurb.
Well, listen, thank you very much, Jamie.
But it's true.
and it'll be out, it came out in the States last month. It'll be in wide release here in February.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think being in this town and thinking about your town, being in Kilmore, that there is a comp between the two. There's a, I guess maybe just because it's by the water.
Yeah.
But it feels quite, so if you're from here, I really recommend this book to you.
Thank
because
you.
I think you will connect with it.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay. I guess we'll do some questions,
Yeah, love to hear some questions. Derek's kindly going to circulate with a microphone.
And please don't be shy, because we have come very far to be here. And I probably won't be back again soon. I mean, I would love to, but you got to be invited, so.
Thanks so much, Rosie and Jamie. I actually just have a question about technology. So I know a lot of books now and a lot of writers are focusing on that kind of 1990s, early 2000s period before everything changed with regards to technology, communication, etc. Like, is it the abstractness of that communication? Is it the way that it kind of changes how we interact with each other? Is that just less gripping because it solves so many of our day-to-day problems, so that takes out some of the nature of our humanity when we're dealing with each other? Or is it some other reason? And also, how then does fiction not get stuck in that time period? Like, how do we move forward and tell those same stories now in a world that has TikTok or whatever?
I mean, I don't know if I'll ever write about TikTok. I don't know if I'm going to speed ahead that far. And also, I'm not so interested in it, but I am interested in social media and communicating online, and I do that quite frequently. I think that this was the novel for me that came out of the pandemic, I'll be honest with you. That I think that this feeling of like, how did we get here? and wanting to understand that. And so I guess that is historical. But also wanting to like streamline things, like not have the technology be in the I think a lot of literature now is like the technology is in the forefront, and I really wanted it in the backdrop, but still there, still really present. I wanted to be removed from it because I just wanted to focus on the people and the humanity behind it. I have certainly written about technology in my fiction, present day kind of stuff, and I don't find it. It's not a knock on people who are really fascinated with it, but I don't find it that interesting to write about it. I find like the real human interaction's the most interesting thing. But again, coming out of the pandemic where I was only able to talk to people, so many people, and even to build this online community and rely on that so much. And I think it was like a counterpoint. Writing this novel was a counterpoint to my daily existence. Like sort of having it there, but not worrying about it, but being a little interested in it too. I feel like your question was much better than my answer, so. But that's my truth. Thank you.
It works. Jami, I've done 1,000 Words of Summer 3 times.
Congratulations.
Haven't got a book out of it. My friend Pam Mandel got a book called The Same River Twice out of it, which has done really well. They've been optioned by a film company. I was wondering, do you get contacted by people who say, out of 1,000 Words of Summer, I've gotten a book, I've gotten short stories?
So that's
Is there such a thing as a 1,000 Words of Summer genre that it comes out in a particular form?
So that's really interesting. So people have, that's something that I sort of went to the charity component of it, but actually there are people who have started books, written books, started book proposals, sold those book proposals, gotten agents. There's this movie that's coming out called Night Bitch, starring Amy Adams, and that book was begun and finished, and then she sold it, and it did become a movie. And she was kind of one of our first people. I mean, she was a writer already, but she really used 1,000 words. It really helped her to focus. So there are times when I walk through like a bookstore and or airport bookstore or something, and I'll pick up a book and I'll be flipping through the acknowledgments and I'll be thanked in it, or 1,000 Words of Summer will be thanked in it, and I don't know that person. So I can't process it, right? Like if I sort of obsessed on it or analyzed it too much, it would give me, what's it called, the yips? Have you ever heard that phrase, the yips? It's like when a professional athlete can suddenly not do it anymore. Like I think if I thought about it too much, I'd feel kind of overwhelmed. And so instead, the easiest way for me to think about it is that we all are doing it together. And that we're all in community together. And then sometimes people tell me about the books, and I try to promote it when I can or talk about it. But it's so many people, and it's been going on for so long that I don't know if I could ever. Maybe that's something I could do for the 10th anniversary. If you wrote or sold a book, like email me and we'll try to do a roll call of it. But again, it's been so many years of it. But I think a lot of people have succeeded. And then of course, the beautiful community angle is like I will go on tour and meet people who've made friends through it, and then they'll all come together to see me at an event. For my events earlier this year, I went and did a book party in New York City, and I met 2 women who had become friends online, and they said, someone's going to show up at your Philly event, and she's part of our cohort. Someone's going to show up in your DC event, and she's part of it, and then all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida, and the last of them showed up. And none of them had met in person, but they all had formed a cohort online because of it. So that's as much a success story to me as the film, although I think it's great. Yeah. That all of it's great. It's all forward motion. It's so beautiful to me. Yeah. It's like my hobby.
I actually have a question for Rosie.
Yes.
And
Hi.
just give you a little bit of background. So I grew up in Donegal.
Okay.
My mom was English, my father Irish, and so I was in the most northerly county of the country,
Sure.
but not in Northern Ireland, which
Oh,
was
I know. But you're in Ulster, yeah.
Ulster, yes.
Yeah.
And the north has always intrigued me because even the place names are divisive, whether you call it Derry or Londonderry.
Sure.
And I wonder, as you say, a blow-in did the complexity of the area, did it strike you, and did that come out in your book?
Every minute of every day that I was writing and thinking about this book. And I address it a little bit, especially where language is concerned. I explain at a certain point in the book that I've come to use Ireland, the North, and Northern Ireland as descriptors for where I live. And I feel comfortable using all three. But I know that many people do not. That there, even among dear friends of mine, there are strong preferences for one term or another, or indeed perhaps another altogether. I tell one story about a guy in a Belfast pub, saying I should be shot for saying Northern Ireland, which wasn't the best night out for me. And then other people in my village, which is unusual. I would say it's as close to a 50-50 demographic mix between the two. Community is a favorite euphemism up there, as you're going to find, I think, anywhere in the North. And part of me really loves that even 5 years into living in Glenarm, I can't always tell, where I might have assumed, oh, a Macaulay, he must be Catholic. Nope. and as I learned writing the book, there is so much intermarriage where I live that the question, it's never irrelevant, but it means something different right now than it might have. So, sensitivity to language and to how different things are perceived constantly on my mind. And I will say this, it's a tough crowd up there, so I was very aware and careful. Like, my worst nightmare would be to be like a stand-up comedian touring Belfast, because, they expect entertainment, and, I think it's a tough crowd, and I love that. But at the same time, you don't want to be too careful and censor yourself.
Yeah.
And I think my perspective as a cautious outsider, might in a tiny way lend something a little different to the whole discussion. But one story, one of my very best friends who lives in Belfast, and she's a wonderful woman, and she's involved in the book industry. And, the book, the title, The Slow Road North, which I stole from my village's little tourism website, because, Seamus Heaney had already taken north, and you can't mess with Seamus. And then the subtitle is How I Found Peace in an Improbable Country. Even the word country has a big question mark. And I understand that. But place sounds very squishy. Region, that sounds very clinical. I can think of it, as country almost in a Yeatsian sort of way. What kind of country? This is no country for old men. What kind of country with a lowercase c? I'm not talking about a nation or a nation with a question mark. So yeah, constantly. And I still think about those questions all the time. And I'm sure I still get the answers wrong a lot.
At least you're asking the questions.
I am always asking the
You got to,
questions.
yeah. Do we have time for one more? If anybody, oh, great, perfect.
Oh, it is working. Thank you both. It's just been brilliant. And I'm from County Cavan, so I'm another Ulster woman. And so I grew up with all the difficulties and so on. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for 1,000 words. I listened to the book, so I feel, I'm not a stalker, but I feel I know your name or your voice very well.
Yeah.
Listening to it in the car and dying to get home to wrench open the laptop and get going. But after leaving a 15,000-word novel in the cupboard for 7 years, and I could hear the little voices, help, let me out. And only I found somebody who was gentle and a mentor this past spring, and got writing again. And I realised that writing is less painful than not writing. But I wanted to ask you about, there's an awful lot of negativity sometimes from authors that say it's so difficult and it's just hell on earth. And then you're committing yourself to another whatever years editing or whatever. And I just thought, golly, if I listen to more of this, I'll be ready to jump up on the church roof. And so it's great to hear your joy in it.
Yes.
And I think for writers like myself who are just learning, really, and I've doubled the 15,000 now, and I don't think I could do 1,000 a day, but I know you say in the book you can set whatever limit. But I just wanted to ask you, are there moments when you dip and you think, you know, or I get distracted by, you know, scrolling through cat videos on YouTube?
Yes, the cat videos. For me, it is the dog videos. I love Doggist. That's on Instagram. That's my favorite. Yeah, I do. So what I do is I get up really early because I find the internet is the thing that eats my brain more than anything else. I live in a beautiful city where I can go and walk around, appreciate nature. I find that if I go for a walk, then that's writing to me. Like I'll be sitting there thinking about the book. The only time that I'm really not is when I'm looking at that screen. And so that has become our contemporary demon, right? It helps us, but it also is, it can taunt us and distract us. And so what I do is I make sure to get up early, or I go to a place where I don't take my phone with me. Like maybe I'll go sit in a cafe, but it's about walking away. There's a great bit in the book, since you've listened to it, from Ada Limon, where she talks about silence and how no one does anything in silence anymore, that we always have the car radio on, or we're listening to a podcast while we're walking, and so it's about finding those silent moments for yourself, and that's when you can hear the voice that you need to hear come out of you, and it's hard to do it. It's hard to do it with noise. You have to, I think, and again, since you read the book, you know this, but it's about choosing yourself also, right? Like you just said the hardest thing would be to not write at all. And so because you know that, you can choose to create a situation that will allow you to write, and you can choose to get rid of those distractions, because some distractions, there's nothing we can do about it. If we have a full-time job, if we have kids, if we have a noisy roommate, you know, it can be really challenging, and we have to figure out ways to carve out that space for ourselves. But if you have, but you know what your distractions are. Everybody knows what their distractions are, and they have to, you know, but sometimes we just want to relax because the world is challenging, to say the least, right now, especially, well, everywhere, but America is not great right now. So we will not sidebar that conversation, but so it is really, but every day I'm just thinking, and I write, you know, I do write 5 days a week when I'm working on that aspect of myself. Like today I didn't because I'm tired, you know, almost over the jet lag, but it's about really showing up for yourself and deciding that this is what you want to do, and also, you know, choosing it as an access point to a different part of yourself. All those kinds of things. But I'm delighted to hear that you've doubled your word count.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Let's give her a round of applause for that. Yes. That's great.